Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Catalyst webinar series presented by the Education Committee for the Southern California PGA. The Catalyst webinar series is a bi-weekly educational platform for creating success and change in your club and career. We're very excited to have one of our sponsors presenting this week on the Catalyst. Andy Matthews is the Director of Golf Performance for Neuropeak Pro, the power of precision breathing and training. Good morning, Andy. Thank you for being on the Catalyst webinar series. And also thank you very much for your support and your sponsorship for the SCPGA.
Yeah, good morning, John. Thanks for having me this morning. As we were just chatting, I know it's a big week for the SoCal PGA with the US Open, and I appreciate everybody hopping on this morning and taking some time out of their morning to dive into what is a topic I'm really passionate about in precision breathing.
Excellent.
So as we dive in here, John, and I know you're going to monitor the Q&A box as we roll through this, and so please, if you do have some questions, drop them in that, and John will monitor that as we go. But just by way of introductions here, obviously my name's Andy Matthews. I'm our Director of Golf Performance at Neuropeak Pro. I've been with the company for 5 years, but my journey with Neuropeak Pro and precision breathing started back in 2008 when I was playing full time. I played my college golf at the University of Michigan, turned pro right after, had most of my status on PGA Tour Canada, spent some time playing in South Africa, had some web.com status, and also Monday'd my way into a handful of PGA Tour events. One of which was actually the 2007 US Open at Oakmont. And ironically, those first 2 rounds, I was paired with Michael Block. So it was fun to see Michael's success as of late. And yeah, there was one of the highlights there. I'll get into a little bit of the story when we talk about pressure and how breathing can help. But 14th hole at Oakmont, Michael holed out for eagle, so that him making shots is not new to me, and probably some of you as well. So and quickly, I started as a pro sports lead in our NFL division. I was working with one of the franchises through their training camp and actually helping them through the NFL draft. And in my current role as Director of Golf Performance, I oversee all of our coaching and business development for Neuropeak Pro Golf. And really the company, we're based in Grand Rapids, Michigan. The company's been around for 16 or 17 years using breathing and brain performance training to offer a science-based method to performance. We actually started on the clinical side with a lot of work with ADHD, anxiety, depression, sleep disorders, migraines, those types of conditions and diagnoses, and using biofeedback and neurofeedback, which precision breathing is one of those components, to really help individuals start to improve their focus, their resiliency, their ability to effectively respond to stress. And we're going to talk about that very much in the golf perspective. But as we all know, life gets faster and busier every day, and we're all really, really good at being stressed. And so this is a skill that anyone can benefit, whether you're talking to one of your students who's playing competitively, or one of your members who's getting ready for the member guest or the club championship, or for yourself while you're in the golf shop or you're on the practice tee teaching. Just the ability to be able to manage those inevitabilities of stress. And what we're seeing from the Neuropeak Pro side in our work on tour, really one of the separators now is really the ability for someone to handle those stressful moments better than the person that they're playing against or competing against. And a little bit of background of kind of who trains with us. I've been involved in coaching with upwards of 60 players across all the major tours. Jordan Spieth is a longtime client of ours. We've got a win out of Victor Hovland at the Memorial a couple of weeks ago. And really, this is starting to become the next kind of separator. You know, everybody has access to the technology. Their equipment is dialed in. You know, they're in the gym. They're doing all of the right things to help them be their best. Obviously, sports psychology is also one of those components. And we want to help bring a science-based method to that mental performance that goes beyond sports psychology. And one of the analogies that I kind of use as we talk about what some of our tour professionals say is that what Neuropeak Pro does and what precision breathing can help you do is upgrade the hardware on which that software, that sports psychology can run on. We've all heard the sayings of get out of your own way, trust your swing, trust the process. And I think a lot of us can relate to that point of knowing what we need to do, but having a hard time doing it and really putting it into play. And so Jordan talks about his work with us being the scientific way to get out of fight or flight and into the zone. I mentioned the LPGA is in Grand Rapids, Michigan this week, our hometown. Madeline Sagstrom is a client of ours. Ash Buhai, who won last week at the ShopRite, is also using precision breathing as part of her training. And so there's a lot of these athletes in professional golf, in amateur golf, and collegiate golf, but also this extends beyond golf and into other sports. The science behind precision breathing training doesn't change. How we apply it certainly does when we're talking with Kirk Cousins or Brock Nelson about hockey. And, you know, certainly we're not going to breathe or use a certain breathing method with a golfer that we necessarily would with a hockey player who's in a really high cardio demand sport. We'll start to talk about recovery and how we can use breathing in between shifts on the ice to help them recover and be their best. But golf is really a sport that gives us an opportunity. It affords us the time to be able to get a little bit more intentional about our breathing while we're out there. And I may ask for a little bit of class participation, if you will, if someone's bold enough to maybe share one of their experiences about a pressure situation they felt on the golf course. So as we work through this, maybe start to think about when you felt some of that. This is a video from Jordan. I believe the audio should play, so hopefully this comes through. John, just let me know if the audio doesn't, and we can come back to it. Actually, it doesn't look like it's going to here. I will come back to Jordan's video because I can hear that it's not playing. And as we dip into a little bit of science here, I'm not going to get too sciencey, but I think it's important for everyone to have a little bit of understanding what's really happening when we're starting to feel the pressure of a situation. And there's a part of our body that's called the autonomic nervous system. And I liken that to the adaptive cruise control on an automobile. It's taking cues from our environment and kind of shifting and accelerating and braking based on what's happening around it to have the optimal response to that actual environment that we're in. And relatably, we've all probably heard that fight or flight. You know, when we're super stressed, our body's natural stress response when it's sensing a threat. The flip side, when our body's moving much slower, is rest and recover. And so our body is continuously fluctuating and moving in between and towards and away these rest and recover responses in fight or flight. If you get cut off on the highway, you want to have that fight or flight, that fast, instinctive response to be able to survive that life or death situation. But that response isn't necessarily helpful, and it's often what a lot of us feel when we're standing over a putt with a few dollars on the line playing against our buddies, or we're standing on the first tee of our club championship, you know that your heart rate's up, you're feeling your sweaty palms. The nice thing is we can start to measure that and also manage that by changing the way we breathe. And what we are seeking is a state of balance. And when we're in that state of balance from a performance perspective, we're able to shift up when it's necessary. And then when that shot or that stressor is removed, we're able to back downshift into that state of balance. On the very slow end of rest and recover, we're talking about sleep. And some of us may have a really hard time winding down after a really long day at the club or at the tournament site, of just kind of shutting our brain off. And so what can we do using the breath to be able to start to influence and manage this? And so when I talk to a lot of our golfers, I ask them to say, let's put yourself in a situation. Maybe you're out after hours. It's just you on the golf course. You're hitting a few shots. There's really no pressure. There's no expectations, and you get a glimpse of what it's like to play, your best. We've all had those moments, certainly, where we talk about being in the zone or being in flow state, where things just come easy, and often there's not a lot of pressure on the line. But what happens to this same mid-length par 3? You can see it's a beautiful day out in the mountains when this happens. So all of a sudden, that par 3, you've got the same club in your hand, it's the same distance, but now you've got all of these expectations, all of those eyes looking at you, the murmur of the crowd, your brain's going through all the what ifs or the what if I don'ts. And this shot that seemed pretty straightforward all of a sudden becomes more important, or feels more important, than any other shot you've hit that day. Obviously, this is Waste Management down in Phoenix, but that 16th hole at Waste Management is lurking the moment you put the tee in the ground on the first tee. So we start to talk about this anticipatory stress too, the night before a tournament, the night before a presentation to your board or at the office, whatever it might be. Again, the science behind this doesn't change. And what the science shows us is that whether it's this shot or your body is in a life or death situation, you are facing a bear attack, the physiological responses in our body are doing the exact same thing. And this is where I know we're going to maybe kind of open it up for questions later on, but think about for yourself when you've been in a moment like that, where you literally couldn't feel your hands because they were shaking so hard. Your heart was in your throat. And the nice thing is about that situation, your body is actually doing exactly what it's supposed to do when it's sensing a threat. We get those sweaty palms, our hands or feet might start getting a little bit cold. Certainly shoulder tension up here. You see people when they're stressed, they're starting to carry things up here and get really stressed. And that has a very significant effect on the dynamics of the golf swing, as we all know. Certainly increased heart rate, those butterflies in our stomach, maybe even getting sick to our stomach when it gets really bad. And our body, because all of that cortisol, the adrenaline that's just being poured into our system, our body also naturally breathes faster. And what happens is we actually breathe really fast and shallow, only using our upper chest, our neck, and those tense shoulders, which are muscle groups that aren't necessarily designed to help us breathe the way that we really should. And so when we put attention to our breath, it's that one automatic function that our body's going to do that we can start to influence. When it's really hot outside, you don't tell your pores to open up and sweat to help cool your body down. Going back to that car analogy, your body is going to sense that environment and say, what do I need to do to try and bring myself back into a state of homeostasis or balance, and really just to survive these next few moments. And we've all seen it, whether we've experienced it ourselves or watched someone on the flip side where you see them go through their pre-shot routine or their golf swing gets quick because all they're trying to do is just get that over with. They're just trying to survive those next 30 seconds. But when we start to put attention to the breath, it starts to have a really positive influence back into our nervous system. And when we start to look at this chain reaction that can start, it starts with the breath. It can start to influence our heart rate and heart rate variability. Those who may be wearing a Whoop or an Oura Ring, Garmin, Fitbit monitor know what heart rate variability is and can start to connect these dots into how heart rate variability gives us insight into how our body is stressed or recovered. Breathing is a key component into helping influence that heart rate variability. And so what does that look like? When we see someone who's breathing and they're under stress, this dark line that you see on the screen is someone's breathing pattern, inhale and exhale over the course of 30 seconds here. And so when we extrapolate this out, this individual here is breathing at 19.7 breaths per minute. The average adult, when you're not thinking about your breath, is breathing between 15 and 18 breaths per minute. Even just sitting here watching a webinar, you're breathing faster than what your body's really designed to do to find that optimal state of balance and help it get into a more performance state. What you're seeing in the red line is our heart rate. Now, when we start to talk about heart rate and heart rate variability in this context, heart rate is influenced by the breath. And it's not just like what you see when you grab, the handles of a piece of cardio equipment, or you look at your Apple Watch and you see what your heart rate is, and say for a conversation here, it's at 70 beats per minute. What your heart rate is actually doing is it's increasing as you inhale and it's decreasing as you exhale. And so those heart rate monitors are looking at kind of what's that average between the max and the min. And so that's when we see that 70, but it may be going up to 90 or 95 and coming down to 60 or 65. So our heart is always fluctuating with the scenario, but it's also trying to respond to our breathing. And as you can see here, our heart you can see that increasing and decreasing, but it's not really in sequence with the breath. And this is where the power of precision breathing training can really start to come in. The heart functions best and can respond quickest to the breath when we breathe closer to 6 breaths per minute. So think about that for a second. 6 breaths per minute is 2 to 3 times slower than what you're probably breathing right now. And it may be a little bit slower now just because since we've been talking about breathing for the last 15 or 20 minutes, you started to have some awareness of maybe how you're breathing and necessarily where you're breathing. What our goal is at Neuropeak Pro and the coaching that I do with our golfers, PGA Tour, LPGA, we have a number of collegiate programs that work with us, and obviously amateur and club players, is to help them learn to breathe in a way that can start to influence that nervous system. And we talk about that chain reaction of breathing to heart rate variability to the nervous system and ultimately the brain. The part of the brain that gets affected first or influenced first is this prefrontal cortex of the brain. And I'm going to just dip into this real quickly here too, but it's where our executive functioning happens. It's where our organization, our decision making, our planning. And so I kind of ask you all to think for a moment. Most of the, say, poor decisions that we've made on a golf course, or maybe just in life in general, how many of them were made from a calm, relaxed state versus a stress state? And so you can start to correlate and see that connection between where the body is and how things are functioning when you're stressed versus when you're in a calmer, relaxed, more zone-like state. And so through training, we're able to help individuals learn to breathe, to be able to control and influence that heart rate and heart rate variability. And when we do, when we start to slow that breath down to around 6 breaths per minute, we can see how these lines clean up and they start to mirror each other. The reason it's 6 breaths per minute, and you'll hear me talk about that a lot, is the majority of individuals find that balance, that nervous system balance between 4.5 and 7 breaths per minute. 6 breaths per minute gives us a really good breathing cadence. And so while this one here is measuring at 5.4 breaths per minute, what we're seeing here is about a 4-second inhale, a 1-second transition over the top of the breath, a 4-second exhale, and then another 1-second transition into the next breath. And this is where we spend and where I spend a lot of my time out of the gate working with our clients and being able to help them learn to, one, breathe better and increase that level of awareness of how their body's responding at any given time, and being able to ask the question, how am I feeling right now? And how do I need to feel to do whatever it is I need to do next? If that's making a putt, that's hitting a tee shot, if that's getting ready for a presentation, a lesson, a board meeting, what have you. The breath can become a really powerful tool to help move the body into a situation where you have the optimal response to the actual environment that you're in. And so what we've done at Neuropeak Pro is develop a step-by-step method that's built on precision breathing training to help strengthen the autonomic nervous system so it has a better, stronger, more appropriate stress response, which ultimately can be measured through changes in heart rate variability and have really positive cognitive brain effects. But overall, when we start to talk with our clients who are both competing professionally in sport or just competing professionally in life, we start to talk about the benefits of lower stress, deeper sleep, faster recovery. I talked about how our hockey players use breathing in between shifts and to wind down after games. The increased focus, where we're starting to be able to have better awareness and make better decisions, and ultimately better performance under pressure. And I mentioned kind of that hardware software analogy. And it's like, if you're working with a sports psychologist or a mental performance coach or even a therapist away from the golf course, it doesn't matter how good that software is if we don't have the hardware in the right spot to be able to run it. Apple or Google could drop the latest and greatest operating system for their mobile device, but if you've got a device that was released 5-10 years ago, the hardware is not going to be able to be there to be able to support that software. So again, we all know we need to get out there and get out of our own way and trust our swing and go through our process and our routines. But if our body's stressed and we're starting to make poor decisions because of it, we're not going to be able to implement that as well as we otherwise could.
So Andy, real quick question. A lot of this breathing technique is tailored to focus on stress and the effects of stress on the body. But does this technique change in terms of fatigue, disappointment, and even patience?
Yeah, certainly. And I would say a great way to think about that is, we all have that that red line where when we hit it, things go sideways, the wheels come off. And whether that appears as disappointment or stress or recovery, we're kind of buttoned up against that. And so if we can start to use the breath to start to lower our starting point, we're going to start to have this much more headroom to be able to play and approach whatever it is that's in front of us. We talk about this 4-1-4-1 breathing cadence as is one to get started with. I want my players and athletes that I work with to get really, really good at creating that pattern so that their breathing is really consistent. Because the next layer to that, John, is one to find the respiration rate that an individual's body resonates best with. It's called a resonance frequency evaluation. And I mentioned that 4.5 to 7 breaths per minute where the majority of us fall. We're going to be able to identify what your specific respiration rate is. It might be 6.2, it might be 5.5, but unless I can get you really good at breathing at 6, I'm not going to be able to shift you down or shift you up into where your body responds best. The next layer on top of that is, okay, I wake up this morning and I'm feeling a little bit lethargic. I'm a little bit behind the curve. I'm going to use a different breathing technique to help me activate and kind of wake myself up. But also we've also heard how, the Navy SEALs use a box breath and start to really slow things down. So even if we took that 4-second inhale, but then added a 4-second hold at the top and the bottom, we're now all of a sudden using 16 seconds to take a breath, and we're already down to maybe 4.5 breaths per minute. And that really helps slow the breath down. A good way to think about it is like a metronome. If there's any musicians on the call this morning, or maybe we've used a metronome to help pace our putting stroke, what happens when that metronome is set really fast? It goes tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, and the music and our actions and everything follow that really fast respiration rate. And that's what a lot of us do without kind of thinking about it on a day-to-day basis. But when we're able to start to influence and slow that breath down into a more rhythmic, consistent tick tock, we're able to start to influence the nervous system that way. And so you talk about patience and disappointment. A lot of our clients certainly talk about the ability to not have things affect them as much when they're in a more balanced state than when they're in a stress state.
And I'm assuming anger would be the same way.
Anger would be the same way. It's, someone who's angry, they're kind of really buttoned up against that red line, and maybe they break through it, and it could take them, a few holes, a 9 or a whole round of golf to be able to even get themselves back to a spot where they're executing in a way that they know how. And so by not only increasing the level of awareness of where someone is in any given point, but then also they've got that tool in their back pocket of saying, okay, I am feeling a little bit uncomfortable here. I'm feeling a little bit nervous about this next tee shot. The shot on 7 just doesn't quite fit my eye. You can start to use those cues that your body's giving you. Are you getting a little sweaty hands? Are you getting a little tense up here in the shoulder? To say, okay, my body's telling me something. I'm getting a little bit more stressed. Let's do something about it before that train gets so far down the tracks that there's no chance of getting it back. I showed you the still image of what that faster breathing looks like. And so this is what it starts to look like as well when we're able to measure it and actually start to train it. That green dot that you see on the right side of the screen is a pacer that's set at that 4-second inhale and that 4-second exhale. And you can see that this person is not following that. And you can see how out of sequence their heart rate and heart rate variability is with their breath. Now, this is actually an individual who's done a ton of training with us. And so you can see how there's a little bit more rhythmic pattern with their heart rate and their heart rate variability, which is that red line, versus what they're breathing. And this is, I think, a key takeaway too, is that even though when we are stressed and our body's going to naturally start to breathe faster, when we start to put some consistent training behind us, and when I talk about that, it's 5 or 10 minutes a day of really intentional breathing. You're going to put this money in the bank, if you will, that you can start to draw on over time. John, you mentioned you caught some traffic on the way into the office this morning. You know, how is your body kind of reacting? Like, hey, I know we've got this call at 8 a.m. I need to make sure that we're in. And you probably start to feel some of those butterflies and whatnot.
Certainly.
And your body's going to breathe a little bit faster. But when you have this type of training in your back pocket, your body's that much more resilient and adaptable to that stress. And so as we start to go down that road, this is one of the things that I really get excited about and passionate about, and is coaching, precision breathing. And that's some of what I want to take the next few minutes here and help the members that are on the call this morning and maybe watching it here after the fact, and give you some precision breathing basics, some things that you can take into your day today that will help you start to manage yourself better through stress. And the first thing we talk about is posture. We talk about posture a lot in the golf swing. It's really hard to breathe well using the diaphragm, using our stomach when we're slouched over and we're in really bad posture. It's hard to breathe well when you're crouched down reading a putt. So one of the first things that we do when we're coaching breathing to set someone else up to have the best success when it comes to their breathing is to get in good posture. And so one of the first things that we always do when we're coaching a breathing session is, kind of scoot your butt into the back of your chair, use that chair the way it's designed, so that you've got a lot of verticality in your torso, because that's going to create the room for your belly to move and your diaphragm to move properly when you breathe. How many times have you, or maybe someone you've seen who's stressed, and you're like, hey, do me a favor, take a deep breath. And how often do you see someone go, this is really exaggerated upper chest and back movement. When we're breathing that way using these muscles, we're not activating our diaphragm. We're not using our lungs to our maximum capacity. And we're essentially getting in the way of our body's ability to find that state of balance and really perform at its best. And so posture is a really key component to that. The next piece is respiration rate. We've talked a lot about that already this morning. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to put on the screen a pacer that we can all kind of follow here for a minute as we breathe. But what I would like you to do is take a hand, whichever one is kind of more comfortable for you, and put it right over your belly button. And with that hand, maybe not even, let me kind of go back here. I'm going to pause this pacer. All I want you to do with that hand on your belly is to push your stomach out. Kind of palm, as you're palming your belly, you kind of just push those muscles out. So you kind of push your hand away from your spine, and not even breathing or pairing the breath with this action, but then start to pull your belly button back toward your spine. And kind of do that sequence a couple of different times. So you push it out and you pull it back. And so as we start to work on respiration rate, we're very much just working on muscle control. We want to be able to use the right muscles when we're breathing. And so as I'll bring this, this pacer back in, start to pair that movement, that out and in movement of your belly with that pacer. So 4 seconds in, 1 second transition, 4 seconds out. And if you're doing this and you feel a little bit lightheaded, just kind of stop and go about your regular breathing, because this might be out of sequence than very much what your body's used to. And so as we start to downshift this respiration rate to this 4-1-4-1 cadence, this is one of the things that's probably the biggest takeaway in just slowing the breath down. The next layer on that is a level of consistency. And we talk about consistency, you can see in the lower left corner of this the screen recording on the app, we're able to measure not only how consistently are you maintaining respiration rate over time, but also how consistent are you hitting the same tops and bottoms of each breath. And the reason we want that consistency is frankly because the heart thrives on it. It doesn't have to guess when or how big the next breath is coming. And so we're able to give the heart, if you will, a little bit of a head start in some predictability in exactly how we're breathing. And then we're able to measure that with autonomic nervous system balance. Now, so going back to that initial image with the car and that sweet spot, there's a heart rate variability metric that's known and trusted in the industry. For those who appreciate the technical side of things, it's the low frequency HRV percentage. And we're able to measure how deep and how strong your body is into that state of balance. So as we work through this and we start to work on posture and the respiration rate, the consistency of the breath and the balance, and we start to carve out, 10, maybe 15 minutes a day, 5 or so days a week, we can start to make a change. And I liken that to just the way we would learn or coach the golf swing, right? John, you could tell me, hey, Andy, I need you to be in this position here at the top of your golf swing. And you know what? I may be able to get there, but it's going to take a lot of conscious effort for me to get there. And so that's why we have the ability to practice and train so that we can repeat that golf swing without having to think about it over and over again. And that's the same way that I approach training breathing with our golfers and our other clients. Is I want to help them change their default breathing to one that's going to sustain them on a day-to-day basis, but then one that when they are in those most pressure situations, that they've got a chance to be able to better manage themselves. And so you can see in this recording here, the heart, that red line, is right in sequence with that blue breathing line. And as I inhale, the red line goes up. And as I exhale, that red line goes down, and we can see that. We can start to measure that state of balance. And you can see in that metric at the very bottom, you can see the consistency of breath is at 98.7. So we're really dialed in physically. And the balance, you can see it right now, it's at 68. And as this is the 30-second loop, so we're not going to really see it go up. But as we start to breathe more and more, you're going to see that level of nervous system balance. And that level of balance is what individuals start to say, and our clients have talked about, is the precursor to the zone. They're not going to find the zone if they're stressed. And so our clients, we've got 8 players in the field at the US Open this week at LACC. I'm going to be able to see their sessions that they ran in 10 minutes before they go to the golf course. We know are their long days at the US Open. Many of them will run another 5 or so minutes in the evening before they go to bed, just to kind of keep things going, because they know how their body responds when they breathe well. You know, and as we kind of bring this to a close and open it up for questions here, you know, bringing it back to this picture, it's stressed, it's difficult, but when you start to have a tool in your toolbox that's able to turn that volume down, maybe we never get to the point of fully tuning everything out, but if overall we can start to move you 2%, 5%, 10 or 20% better in the right direction and more balance, we're going to help you set yourself up and stack the deck a little bit more in your favor to perform your best under pressure. Quick, the Intel belt, this is the device that we were using to measure. I'll have some more info here at the end, and we do offer a certification program as well for those that want to dive in a little bit more. PGA of America is offering 3 PDRs for any professional who does complete the level 1. And with that, let's open it up to questions.
Andy, thank you very much. Can you talk a little bit about the Neuropeak Pro as a retail product?
Sure. So the Intel belt is worn right around the sternum, just as you would a normal heart rate monitor. The difference being that sensor, that circular sensor you see there, it has an accelerometer and a gyroscope in it that's able to depict what that physical breathing pattern looks like. So in the screenshot you see here on the right, that blue line is that physical respiration pattern, the one that we can control. There wasn't anything on the market for us to do the type of training that we were finding so beneficial. Frankly, starting out on tour, we were sending out $3,500 worth of medical grade breathing and heart rate variability equipment to our tour pros and having to charge them, you know, $1,200 a month for coaching. But they were doing it, and they were carrying that really cumbersome set of equipment around because it worked, and they were having tremendous success with it. And, you know, fortunately we had some plans on the drawing board as the pandemic was coming in, and we put those into action. And so the Intel belt, we released it last January at the PGA show, and really it's the first of its kind wearable precision breathing training device. And as you can see, it helps quantify a user's breathing. Everybody kind of knows that the breath can be used to help manage stress, but nobody knows how to do it right, or they've never seen what their breathing looks like in real time. So what we've done is we've packaged that up into a retail product that retails for $199. And
that's this sternum torso belt.
Correct.
That's linked to an app on the phone that's worn during training sessions? No, I'm assuming not during the round of golf or during the performance.
Correct. Yeah, we designed it to be a trainer and not necessarily a tracker. So liken that to if you're using, TrackMan, Foresight, whatever your launch monitor might be, you're not going to take that out and hit every golf shot on the golf course with it. You're going to run your combines, you're going to do your training off the golf course so that you're that much better with it when you get on the golf course. And so that's what the Intel Belt today is designed to do. We've got some things in the works that's going to help provide this feedback in real time when, say, a player's doing a pressure putting drill or a TrackMan combine, so that you can start to see what your balance is looking like in real time, and being able to use the breath the way that you know how to use it to move that balance in the right direction. And I've mentioned a lot of the work that we've done on tour. What we did in the coaching section of the app, there's a lot of on-demand videos in there that literally walks an individual through the training method that I've gone through with Jordan, with Victor, with Madeline, with Ash. We made it very consumable. And then from there, like I mentioned, if there's someone who wants to go a little bit deeper into it, there is that certification program where you can have a little bit more one-on-one interaction, not only with us at Neuropeak Pro, but essentially set yourself up to be that expert with your clients. We know, as golfers, as coaches, as instructors, we want to try it and trust it before we necessarily introduce it to our students. And so that's where we've gone with that.
Now, in a couple of slides prior, was there a wrist device as well?
No, it's all worn right around the chest with that one Neuropeak Pro belt. Fantastic.
Well, Andy, on behalf of the Education Committee for the Southern California PGA, thank you very, very much for volunteering your time to present and educate the membership this morning on the Catalyst. Also, on behalf of the section, we do want to extend our gratitude to you for your support and sponsorship. Everyone on today's Catalyst will receive 1 PDR credit for the education session. Also, there's Andy's contact information and some data on price points and such. We are going to be sending out the YouTube recording of Andy's presentation to all the attendees that are on this morning. It'll also be available after the fact on the section website under the education dropdown in the Catalyst archives. Andy, thank you very much for joining us this morning, and everybody enjoy the Open this weekend.
Thanks, John. Have a great week, everyone.